Greetings and salutations, scholars. Welcome back to Scholars with a capital S. Today we are doing a feature on the arts here at Binghamton, and we are lucky to have the new founding director of the arts, Christopher Robbins, here with us today. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and so just to start off, could you just briefly introduce yourself to people that don't know you that are listening, and maybe a bit about your background?
Okay. So I'm founding director of School of the Arts. I started here last August. So I've been here a year, almost a year and a half, I guess, at this point. Before that, I was director of the School of Art and Design down at Purchase College, which is in Westchester. It's like an arts-focused SUNY. Before that, life was quite a whirl. I mean, art brought me all over the world. I was in the Peace Corps in Benin, West Africa.
Oh.
I was in the Fiji Islands in the South Pacific for a few years. I lived in London, Serbia, doing art in cross-border reconciliation, conflict resolution. Then, came to the States. I went to RISD, Rhode Island School of Design for grad school in the arts, and then taught there a bit. And so all over the place. And then...
That's really awesome. I did not know most of those things about you. Very, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of tapping into that, obviously you've had a lot of experience. Why do you believe the arts are important? Why are they important for yourself or in a larger context, I guess I would ask?
Okay. Well, the arts can really break open how people think about things. I feel one thing that can happen in arts is it can become very insular and closed, and that breaks my heart because people can think, oh, arts is only for fancy people or that sort of thing. But my experience is the arts is wide open now. It can be things that many people will think aren't the arts, but it gives you license to do something you wouldn't otherwise. And I mean, for instance, I found myself working in Israel with Eritrean refugees in a prison camp in the desert as part of an art project, or working on the U.S.-Mexico border with recently deported immigrants and kind of vigilante border patrols trying to keep them out and kind of working with both of those groups through the arts. So I've worked with engineers and lawyers and finance about building this project that is regenerating a street corner in Detroit by physically linking up abandoned buildings with this huge sculpture, but then also purchasing that land into a land trust so that people in the neighborhood can afford to stay there, because art often gentrifies and displaces. So the arts really have relevance can have relevance in anyone's life, either simply to make them look at the world differently. It's created amazing adventures in my life, and also to look at their own field differently. And I mean, that's really what brought me to Binghamton. It's a School of the Arts. This is a Research One university that's really known for STEM, that has recognized the importance of the arts and is investing in that. And the class I teach in the spring with Neva, Kenny, and Dance, we create that class to help people use art processes to think about their own fields differently and kind of break out some of the confines. Last thing I'll say is I think it's also particularly important at Binghamton because I was a student where you get good at getting good grades. And really that means learning how to manipulate a teacher. And it can feel good winning that game and learning like, okay, there's this whole course, but this small fraction is how that teacher seems to think about it. That's the way I'll learn it so I can get my good grade. You get the grade, but oh my gosh, think about how much you've lost. And what I loved about the arts is it forces you to think differently about what you're doing, forces you to translate it into a different medium, performance, etc. And so you end up understanding something in a different way than your habit would ever have allowed you to. And that's why I really feel the arts relevant for everyone and can bust you out of your blind spots and assumptions.
Yes, definitely. You've touched on a lot of really important things there. And I can, understand what you're talking about in regard to doing work to kind of get good at a class. And then you kind of miss the whole lesson or content area that you signed up for the class in the first place. And art is so special because it's often so personal to yourself.
Yeah.
And it's subjective too. There is no specific criteria. You go hit this and then you're done.
Yeah.
And so you listed so many things that you've done. I'm just curious, what kind of art do you usually, what mediums do you usually work with? What are you most passionate about?
Well, sculpture is definitely my go-to. The material, I mean, wood was initially my comfort zone, though lately it's been laser cut stainless steel, but really it's become cross-cultural. Sculpture is a way to create a cross-cultural connection. So I think a lot of my life I had this conflict of I loved art, but I didn't love sitting alone in a room, or when I started using computers, staring at a laptop in these different countries I lived. And I loved just the kind of difficulties of negotiating a different culture and trying to understand things from a very different perspective. And so, to put it very simply, usually the sculptures I create, it's almost always collaborative, and usually they're created in response to a specific issue or concern between two different groups of people. And then that's the building of that sculpture becomes a way to connect the different groups of people around some conflict or misunderstanding.
Literally building bridges.
Yeah, that's true.
Very,
Yeah.
very cool. And so something you also tapped on with this idea that a lot of people believe that the arts aren't for them. It's kind of like for the upper echelons of society or something like that. And so what do you believe are some of the misconceptions that people have about the arts and their purpose in general? Maybe fleshing that out or other things that you kind of want to speak on in that regard.
Okay. Well, I mean, a lot of people think arts is like a luxury or irrelevant, that it's like some extra thing you can tack on, that it's just entertainment or decoration or something that's outside my normal life. But there's a couple ways that that's a power. One is the idea that it's outside your normal life means that it can help you think about the rest of your life in a different way that you wouldn't give yourself license to. And also, art creates culture, which in the end creates reality beyond any. So it's actually incredibly powerful when we think of decisions societies make. The way what we see as a truth is coming from our shared culture, which is created by the arts to the point where it's invisible. You don't realize that how you think about the world came from the shared culture you have with other people that comes from the arts. And so it's almost so powerful you don't even notice it. But to tap into that, you can have that power of making real change through the arts.
Yes.
But that's not how someone typically thinks of the arts.
Yes, I agree. And definitely, and it's so interesting. I like that you were talking so much about how in your art, you kind of try to bring together different like groups in conflict or different cultural perspectives. And something that I enjoy, especially today now with all of the access to information that we have, you can access so much art across the world.
Yeah.
Whether that's observing paintings, but even watching other cultural films and stuff like that. And so that's definitely something that I think is extremely important. You can learn so much about other people through art outside of even your own experience. And so obviously you have a lot of opinions and perspectives and experience. And so since the School of the Arts is new, I kind of wanted to ask you about, what are your goals here to help strengthen the arts at Binghamton?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, one is I've worked at a bunch of prestigious schools, and I can say the faculty, the staff, the students, the facilities here are really strong. But when people think of Binghamton, they're not thinking arts. And so that's one thing we want to change is first on campus, getting more and more people to realize the arts are here and that they're strong and that they're accessible. Like, as a student, you can minor, you can you have to take one gen ed class, but that class can not just be this obligation that you're trying to get out of the way. It can help invigorate what you're doing in your own work. It's a lot easier to double major than people realize. And I mean, our theater productions, our music productions are open and often require non-majors. You can take voice lessons. There's so much out there. Curate shows. I've never been at an institution, at a school that had a museum where there's an entire floor of student curated shows. The access students can have, whether you are an art major, a major in the arts or not, is really strong. So that's the first thing. Like, I want students on campus to realize the arts is here for you. Go to our webpage, look up School of the Arts, Binghamton University, click the news and events. We have a calendar of all the events on there. You can subscribe to it. It'll pop up on your phone alongside everything else. There's also an arts opportunities link that shows all the different opportunities for non-majors and majors that there are. So that's a big part of it. And then, of course, letting the rest of the world know just how great there is. So we're working on admissions for the arts is different than for other programs. So we're working on that. We're kind of revolutionizing how we're approaching the admissions and recruiting for the arts to make sure it's the sort of thing that can align with people who are interested in the arts. We're reaching out. There's amazing alums in the arts, reaching out to them more. They're coming, working with our students. They're spreading the word about what we're doing. We have a new speaker series where we're bringing different visiting artists in. And the obligation is you can't just come here, say your words and leave. we need to work face-to-face with students, help them out. We're doing a lot of professional development. Like actually, we'll have with Fleischman Center our ongoing series of real-world art tips, which is majors and non-majors. Our last one was about half and half. It's just to help you learn that other side of, you may have the skills, the interests. What else is needed to actually get established in it? So those are some of the things we're doing for the arts.
And that's actually perfect because that leads directly into my next question.
Okay, yeah.
Which is, what advice do you have for those students that really want to pursue a life and career in the arts? Because my whole life, there's such a common narrative about people. It's like, oh, don't pursue a career in that. That's not possible. That's not tangible for you. And so one is really encouraging that a school like Binghamton is putting the effort into the School of the Arts. So I was kind of curious. Obviously, you've noted some excellent programs for students to participate in. But what's your advice in that regard as someone who is successful?
Yep, definitely the professional development that we'll be putting together is important. I mean, talking to your one regret I have is I didn't show up to office hours for teachers much. Like, talk to the teachers. They have so much fantastic experience, our professors. And okay, the most important thing is in terms of what networking is, I thought networking meant show up to some opening, drink crappy wine and cheese, feel awkward trying to promote myself while knowing that it's really obnoxious to do that at someone else's event, meeting people to try to use them to make it, and it felt awful to make an opportunity for myself, and it felt awful and it didn't work. And eventually I realized, no, networking is pursuing something you love with other people who also love it. It's totally natural. And also it's not like I was taught to be competitive, like, everything was a competition. But the reality is every time I've helped someone get a connection, help someone, it comes back. Like, we all form a group. And so movements, institutions, opportunities come from these collectives that you create. And so in the end, it's really actually easy. If you're actually privileging what you love, finding other people that love it, through that shared passion, you're going to be successful. It will come together. And when I see people are really successful, not just in terms of prestige and finances, but also just happy with where they are in life, it's because they had the guts to kind of trust that and do what they were loving with people that they loved. I know that sounds like some pie in the sky vague thing, but it's just weird how incredibly practical that advice is. And it took me a while to realize. And I just saw how things opened up for me just by doing a good job working on something I love to do, and how I felt miserable and things didn't happen when I forced myself to do something that I thought was quote unquote good for me.
Right.
So that's the simplest advice.
No, yeah, I appreciate that sentiment, because even as an undergrad, it's so daunting. The idea of, oh, you've got to network, you've got to figure all this out, you got to make your connections, move your way up the ladder. But even being at Binghamton, it's like you said, interacting with your professors and then just like finding yourself having a conversation about something you're both interested in, and just like, honestly building friendships with people. It just takes you like 10 miles along the way. So I appreciate that advice. I think that's like a good thing to hear. And so another thing that we were discussing is this idea of you wanting to allow people to realize just how accessible the arts here at Binghamton. I mean, me as a student, I'm involved in an organization on campus. I do ballroom dance, as you know. I'm taking a piano class next semester. I know engineers that have done the theater productions here. And I think it's so important for our listeners to recognize that even if you're not necessarily pursuing a career, but it's something you're passionate about, it's still accessible to you. And so in a similar vein, what advice do you have for those students that maybe are more STEM-oriented, for example, at like in the school such as Binghamton, but don't necessarily think that they actually fit into the arts?
Well, I mean, one interesting thing I learned working on admissions, this was at a school specifically for art and design, and the School of the Arts encompasses art and design and also art history, cinema, music, theater, which also encompasses dance, and creative writing, a partner program. So obviously it's much broader than this, but the knee jerk was to look at how well someone drew pictures, whether we admitted them or not. I mean, thanks to movements like Black Lives Matters and trying to become more attuned to how privilege really correlated to how well you could draw, because often someone being able to draw quote unquote well meant that they were able to attend after school or weekend programs or summer programs, or that their school system had the funds for the arts. And so once we started actually looking at what work people were doing as seniors and what ranking they'd gotten on their drawings, there was no correlation. And so what I've learned also since coming to Binghamton, teaching a class where 4 of the students were majors in the arts and everyone else was not, those non-art students were kicking ass. Because if you're talented and hardworking at anything, like that is the big entry point, like grit and determination and being open and creative, which doesn't mean I can draw a picture that, or I came up with some idea that sounds different than that. It's just being open to learning new things. So my experience in, I guess, 2 decades working in arts education is just that the people who have the quote unquote skills in the arts, that's not the whole story. It's about having curiosity and being willing to push yourself, which I know Binghamton students have. Plus, it's just so easy to access here. Definitely click that like arts opportunities thing. It's not like you're going to commit to, you don't have to commit to this. You show up to one tryout. We even have like, they have a whole page where they're going to help you. If you're frightened of this idea about having an audition, you'll see there's like guidelines for helping you learn how to audition. It's super open. Plus, last thing I'll say about that, new ideas come from unexpected places. And one thing in every field there is, professionalization often means doing it the way it's already done. And then we wonder why like new ideas aren't coming out, or like experts get tunnel vision because we're all trying to do it the way it is already done. When you're coming from outside and you have that like beginner's naivety, you can call it, or just the wrong idea. Actually, the class I teach is called Do It Wrong on Purpose, the one I co-teach with Neva Kenny. When you're coming in with not knowing the way things are already done, you're going to reinvent it in a new way. That's incredibly exciting for people in the field as well. So the very fact that you aren't already steeped in the arts means that you're bringing something new that's going to completely invigorate it. And just know that it's a loving place. Like, people are happy that you're there, happy to be able to share, and no one's looking to cut you down because you didn't hit a note or something. So just know you're super welcome, and it is a loving, anywhere where you're bearing your soul and your heart every week has to be loving, or no one's going to be willing to really show that much of themselves. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you. Those are very kind, encouraging words that I'm happy to hear. I can totally resonate to that idea of just like the hardworking student, that dedicated person can really make progress. Like our dance team that we have, most people join the team, 0 dance experience in their life. And then, we're all self-taught, work together. We had a couple people at a competition last weekend place in the open level, which is like the highest you could do in the collegiate sphere. So, I mean, I really do feel that Binghamton is able to bring that kind of community and culture of anyone can do this. And so I'm happy you're here to help build that up. Do you have any kind of closing thoughts you want to tell the scholars and anyone else who's listening? You've already given us a lot of great resources, but just want to give that space for you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just reiterate to check out the website, make sure you click news and events and subscribe to the calendar so you can come to the events that are going on and check out the arts opportunities. And yeah, just know that the arts are for you in a way you don't realize. Yeah, I reiterate that.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and chat with us today about the arts. I'm sure everyone will be very happy to hear about all this great new stuff. And as always, Scholars with a capital S, we will be back in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.